once again.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another cheapo multimeter review. Today we're looking at a name that everybody knows. It's the Mastech, and it is the Mastech MS8233C, a non-auto ranging multimeter. Now, typical Mastech colors are that army green, and I like it. Yeah, they do come in other colors, such as the M3900 I reviewed a while back, but yeah, let's stick with the green Mastech because that just works for you. Spec-wise, it's really nothing to get that excited about. It's a 2000 count multimeter. It does AC and DC voltage up to 600 volts, DC current to 10 amps, AC current to 10 amps, and resistance up to a whopping 2 mega ohm. But the nice thing about this non-auto ranging meter is the fact that it also does temperature. That's right, Fahrenheit or Celsius, it does do temperature. It has a CAT rating, a CAT 2 600 volts, and it's powered by one lonely 9-volt battery. Now, if we take a look at the meter itself, like I said, it is a non-auto ranging. Now, first thing you're going to see that's perhaps slightly different than a lot of multimeters is the fact that the range switch is on the left, so the 9 o'clock position. Yeah, that does happen a lot, but typically with non-auto ranging multimeters, usually it starts at the 12 o'clock position. So right away, your on-off is at the 9 o'clock. Speaking of the rotary switch, you can tell it's got that nice clackety-clack. I really like it. It has definite authority. It's not going to get stuck on any ranges. Feels good. Perhaps it is a tad on the small side, but I do like the range switch. Speaking of size, if we put it up against the WinApex 82 ET8101, which I recently reviewed, it's pretty well on par. Perhaps just a tad, I don't know, maybe 50 cents one way or the other. Pretty close. Mastech maybe about a centimeter thicker, but yeah. Now the other thing about this Mastech is if you can take a look, there is a light. And what is that for? Well, you guessed it, NCV, non-contact voltage detection. Now with this particular multimeter, there is no NCV setting. All you do is stick this up to a power source, and if it's there, theoretically the Mastech will start to flash, and we'll test that out shortly. Another decent feature with this meter is the fact that the boot has a pretty nice feel to it. Feels pretty solid. No worries here. I'm pretty sure this can take a drop or two without anything major happening. You're still going to have a meter at the end of the day. If you look at the back, something different as well is that the folding bail or the tilting stand is actually part of the rubber housing. So it's not actually attached to the meter. And what that means is it just gives you a little more control in terms of position. So unlike some multimeters where you're basically stuck at that typical 45-degree angle, what have you, 90-degree angle, this one, basically it's off the charts. So whatever you're comfortable with in terms of an actual look, it's capable of doing. I kind of like it, something like this. It seems to work pretty well on the eyes. Speaking about easy on the eyes, the display is nice and crisp. Now it's only a 2000 count multimeter, but it is a crisp, clean display. Yes, that's a backlight. Let's turn it on. Whoa, look at that. It has that nice kind of alien green, but you see what just happened? It only lasts for around 5 seconds and then the lights go down. Yeah, lights out in Georgia. Now, what you can do with the Mastech MS8233C is hold down on the light itself. And if you're doing this, as long as you have your other hand handy, your business for as long as you need that backlight. So you can see I'm holding down on the light and it is not going off. So if if I was doing some sort of checking in the basement late at night, what have you, there's a power outage and I do need to see what I'm doing. As long as I have my finger on that light button, A-okay. As soon as I take it off, 3, 2, 1, 0, ba-boomba. There we are. So yeah, it's too bad that it doesn't stay on all the time, but at least you can keep it on all the time by keeping it pressed in with your finger. The other feature you can tell right off the get-go is the hold button. It's your typical hold, nothing fancy. Once you do a reading, press hold, and it will hold the reading itself. Nothing at all fancy or remotely alluring like touch hold, what have you, but yeah, it's a hold feature, what the heck, you know. Now with this meter, you also get your Mastech leads. They're rated at 10 amp, and they are perhaps a little bit on the small side. Here you can see the rating, 1000 volt, Cat 3. They have all sorts of ratings here on the side as well. Your CE reading, I'm not sure how much warmy fuzziness that'll give you, but I mean, they're not that bad. They do have that protective cover here, and if we lose that cover, because it does come off, and you can see we have a nice tip. Not super pointy, you know, I'm not going to draw blood doing this. No, but yeah, pointy enough. My only complaint with these leads is the fact that I find them a little bit on the small side. Take a typical standard set of leads, and yeah, I just find them, if I can get that into focus or not. So you can see they're just a little bit shorter lengthwise. Now in terms of the actual relief on the end, a lot of leads, you have this standard stress relief here for the lead. I like that, it works. On the Mastechs, you have a similar incorporation, perhaps a little more aesthetically pleasing, but it does the same thing. They're made out of a fairly decent material, nothing fancy. You definitely know you don't have a ProbeMaster in your hands, but the gauge of the wire is fairly thick, probably thicker than your standard, as you can see here. Do we have a gauge rating on here? So there is a rating imprinted on the wire itself, as you can see, 1000 volt, 20 AWG. AWG is the American wire gauge system, also known as a Brown and Sharp wire gauge. This has been used forever in North America normally, probably since the mid-1800s, go figure. But that is the rating, 20 AWG, so it's good size, good quality, and no complaints. If you look at the lead ends themselves, this is the part that attaches into the multimeter itself. The shrouding is not as long as a lot of other different leads, your typical average lead. It's definitely a little on the short side, but in this case, it does fit into the meter quite well. Just take that shroud and just put it in. You can see we have a nice snug fit and nothing is hanging out. Try that with the other lead. Yeah, it's just a little bit too long, too wide, and you've got that perimeter extruding like that. So for this particular meter, those lead tips are perfect. In terms of safety, the Mastech MS8233C is boasting an IEC 61010-1. So the electrical test and safety measuring industry standard. And as you can see, if we just move it down, we have a 10 amp rating with a 250 volt max on the current. And as well, in the milliamp range, we have 250 milliamps, 250 volts. And we'll double check the fuses just to make sure that those are up to snuff. Finally, you get a thermal probe, thermocouple, whatever you want to call it, and this is for your temperature. It's fairly decent actually in terms of the build quality. It's a P3400 thermocouple, K-type style. Just does seem to be a little bit better made than a lot of them that ship with these cheapo multimeters, but we'll try that out shortly. First off, we're going to try the continuity feature. And as you know, it's one of my favorites. We have it set to continuity right now. These are the stock probes that the Mastech ships with. Here we go. Ugh. Oh. Really scratchy. Really low volume-wise. I mean, it's barely audible. Can you even hear this? Wow. Turn up the volume, folks. Yeah, that's kind of paltry, pathetic continuity with the default probes. Something else, actually, that's kind of a bummer. You know, they've got this light here for Ncv. Why couldn't they somehow tie that into the continuity as well? You know, a nice simple circuit so you've got a visual as well as an audio indicator. You know, that would have been nice. That would have been nice, have a dual feature. But no. You just have the pathetic, paltry continuity. Yeah. Alrighty, so here's another set of probes. These are the cheap, good set of probes. And just see if the continuity is any better. Definitely better. Still, yeah, the tonation is louder. Still scratchy sounding, but definitely better than the stock leads. Okay, let's do a quick voltage test comparison between another Mastech and the venerable Fluke 83. Here we go. Starting off with 5 volts even according to the DC power supply, 5.09 on the old Mastech M3900, 5.09 on the MS8233, and 5.04 for the Mastech. So, I don't know, down to 503. Fairly close. Let's keep going up. Here we are now. Let's go to, let's try 12 volts. 12 volts even, 12.0, 12.1, and 12.1. Up and away. Take it up to 20 volts. 20.6 volts. And you can tell because we have 2 non-auto ranging meters. Just gonna move those up. So the Mastech M3900 sitting at 20.5 volts. 8233, 20.6, and 20.6 as well for the Fluke 83. Alrighty, taking it up to the max now. We're going to sit at 31.5 volts, 31.3, 31.5, and 31.53. Slightly better resolution on the Fluke, but yeah. So good job, Mastech MS8233C. Pretty well on par with the Fluke in terms of the DC accuracy. Awesome. Quick check at resistance with the Decade box. We're sitting here just under 1 mega ohm, 999, and we're showing as a 0.994, so around 5 counts off, no big deal. Just under 10 mega ohm, obviously, that's going to be way over spec. Let's go up to 2 mega ohm. And it's a little slow to settle, as you can tell, so we're around 9 counts off. Let's see if it can go anything higher than 2. No. 2.1 mega ohm. No, no can do. So yeah, 2 mega ohm is what we're maxed out with the MS8233C. No problems with AC voltage. Here we are in the North American power grid, 122 volts. Awesome. Okay, now we're going to take a look at the non-contact voltage detection. Once again, there's nothing to do. There's no switch to press. You just basically take your meter, turn it on, doesn't matter where it is on the rotary switch dial, and put it up to a power source. And as you can see, it's pretty lame, folks. No audible indicator, strictly visual, and you can't even see it. I mean, like, really? What the heck is that? And I'm like right on top of it. I mean, there's just no room for error. Oh, that's really sad. No, that's not good. Okay, we're testing out the thermocouple now, and let's compare apples to apples. On the left is the Mastech, showing us an ambient temperature right now of 23 degrees Celsius. The Unity UT39C is showing us slightly cooler at 21 degrees. And let's see if we go into the Fahrenheit mode. So 68 degrees Fahrenheit for the Mastech and 70 degrees Fahrenheit for the Unity. So that's interesting. Now if we go back to Celsius, so the Mastech is now showing 23 and 21 is the ambient temperature. So there's a slight discrepancy in terms of the temperature mode with the Mastech, because as you can tell in the Celsius mode, it does seem to be, so interesting little discrepancy. For some reason with the Mastech, in the Celsius mode, it's registering warmer than the Unity. But when we switch it to the Fahrenheit mode, it is suddenly cooler than the Unity, and it's the same temperature. So yeah, obviously the thermal probe inside is not the most accurate in the world. Really, that shouldn't be happening. Obviously the temperature should be the same whether it's in Celsius or Fahrenheit. Okay, now we have them both immersed in a hot cup of water. And as you can see, still a discrepancy. The Unity is showing us a rating of about 152 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're getting 137 degrees Fahrenheit with the Mastech. So that's quite a difference, about 13, 14 degrees. Now let's just go to Celsius mode. So in Celsius mode, 59 degrees Celsius for the Mastech, 62 degrees for the Unity. So at least that interesting diversion is not here with the water temperature. So in this case, the Mastech is showing slightly cooler than the Unity. Remember, we had 135 degrees Fahrenheit compared to 149 Fahrenheit for the Unity. Now we're at 59 Celsius compared to 62. So yeah, probably not the most accurate thermocouple in the world. There you go. Something else worth mentioning as well is without the thermocouple attached, you do not have no reading in the temperature scale, either Celsius or Fahrenheit. So you always need to have that thermocouple if you're going to measure temperature. To connect the battery, it's 1 9-volt battery, has your typical not so great. Could even get it out of there. Yeah, so it's one of these 9-volt connectors. I prefer, obviously, when you have the pins you just put in, but anyway, it is what it is. There is a metal standoff inside of there, so at least it's not just going into plastic if you have to remove this every now and then. So with the 9-volt battery turned on, the Mastech is drawing about 2.5 milliamps. So with the 9-volt battery, if we do the math, we should end up with around 150 to 200 hours worth of battery life with a good 9-volt battery. Looking at the input impedance of the Mastech, it's 1 mega ohm. Definitely not as good as some of the other cheaper multimeters I've tested lately. Okay, we're going to take a look at the inside of the Mastech. This is the boot, and as I was mentioning before, the tilting stand is actually attached to the boot itself, so it's not connected to the multimeter, strictly to the rubber housing. Something else worth mentioning, as I was taking off the rubber boot, the encapsulated LED housing came out of the meter somehow. I'm not sure how, but it just popped right out as I was taking off the rubberized housing, so that's a fail. Okay, so we're on the inside of the Mastech, and right off the get-go, yeah, no shielding. Why am I not surprised? Oh well, I really wasn't expecting it. Okay, let's start down at the bottom of the PCB. And you can see here we have the input probe. 1, 2, 3. And they're actually in there quite well. I've got no complaints. The plastic housing keeps them in there nice and solid. They are the split variety, but once again, the way they are encapsulated here, I really can't see too much wear and tear, at least in the short term. We have our 2 fuses, one on the milliamp and one on the current range. They are both rated at 250 volts, 250 milliamps here. And this is 250 volt 10 amp here. And I did verify they are up to spec. So they are using the correct fuses. They are the small type ceramic fuse, not the glass fuses. So that's a good thing. They are awfully close to the housing though. If you can even see that, it's pretty well touching the edges of the meter itself. So I would have liked to have seen a lot more clearance than that. What else do we have for protection? Well, here we have, you can count them 1, 2 PTCs. They're slightly, maybe a little lethargic looking, what have you. My wife likes to call them the little frogs, but we have 2 little frogs here. So here we have, these are Sinochip Electronics PTCs, thermistors. We have 2 of them here connected, and they are the WMZ12A model, and they are rated for 12 amps of overcurrent overload protection. And the WMZ is a signifier of the Sinochip PTC thermistor. So yeah, we got 2 of those in there, so that's a good thing. On top, you can see we have this resistor array going on, a lot of resistor clamping. And here's an LM358 dual op amp from Texas Instruments. We actually have not one, but another one here at the top. So we have 2 LM358s on this board, and this is a Schmidt trigger here. We have a lot of wires that are extruding from the PCB, which I don't like. Now these 2 are feeding the speaker itself. We've got the other wires coming up from underneath here. This is what goes out to the 9-volt power supply. We have a diode here. Now that's probably for reverse polarity protection, I'm assuming. And if we look at the Ncv Detection, it's pretty crappy. Yeah, so we've got this cheesy iron, metal, whatever, filament here, super cheap, connected with this really cheap, low quality, crappy wire. And these 2 here are feeding the actual LED itself. But yeah, that's why that NCV is so poor, because it's just poorly made. So, yeah, garbage there. A lot of glue here for the LCD display itself. Not sure why they use so much glue. Might have had a sale on or something. It's quite surprising that the continuity just sucks in this model, because if you look at the size of that speaker, it's fairly freaking large. So, yeah, I mean, we have 9 volts as well. I'm not sure why it is such a crappy sounding continuity. Yeah, with a speaker like that, you'd think they'd be able to hear us all the way in Texas, but apparently not. If we check out the quality of the PCB, it's not too bad at all. Mostly SMD, though we do have some through-hole components, a lot of diodes over there as well, some diode clamping going on. What the? Huh? Okay, that's interesting. So there's a manufacturing date, the MS8233C version 6, 2012, December 11th. So this new meter, which just came in last week, is actually almost 7 years old. Well, 6 years old. Certainly not new. 2012. Wow. Okay, interesting. Yeah. Something else worth pointing out as well is the fact that here, as I was mentioning, that fuse is awfully close to the side of this meter. And what happens is when you're actually trying to close the meter, the ridges of the case are actually hitting that fuse. See that? So, I mean, that's just pure shite, that is. I don't know what the heck they were thinking, like why they couldn't have brought that in a little bit. I mean, come on, you know? Make the case bigger. Closing thoughts on the Mastech MS8233C. Well, I don't like it. You know, it's a cheapy multimeter, yeah, but it's not $8, not $10. No, I paid 24 bucks Canadian for this, so around $20, $21 US. It's just not worth it. I mean, I paid less for this one Apex ET8101, which is true RMS. Auto ranging, you know, features galore. No comparison. No, the Mastech is definitely not worth the money they're asking for it, and it does a lot of things, but nothing particularly well. We saw the temperature probe was, you know, interesting, way off. Didn't really make sense the way the readings were coming out. It's non-auto ranging, so I always have to finick with the switch, which could be a bit of a pain. It's slow to range, and when I say slow, yeah, it's slow. I mean, resistance took a while. I mean, Grandma was slow, but she was 99, so yeah. I do like the backlight. I think it's kind of good looking, but once again, it only stays on for like a couple of seconds unless you hold it down. And speaking of hold, it's got that crappy old hold switch. You know, and hey, the PCB was like 6-7 years old, so you know, selling an old multimeter at a new price, Now you could do a lot better in the cheapy multimeter arena. So the Mastech 8233C is getting a paltry 1.5 out of 5 stars. Hey, I like the green, but not much else. Thanks for watching, guys. Till the next one, keep on testing.